maybe no one is doing more for the liberty movement than Spike Cohen. And he's an excellent messenger. And every time you hear him talk, he's on point. But he stopped trying to be a messenger, and instead he's living his principles.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 399. I am talking to Rob Yates. He is from North Carolina, and he is running for the position of chair of the Libertarian National Committee here in the USA. So he wants to run this big thing called the Libertarian Party in the United States of America and be chair of the LNC. So how are you, Rob? How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me. Been looking forward to this one.
Rob, first of all, can you tell me what other offices have you held within the Libertarian Party during your time with it?
So within the party, I've actually only been communications director in North Carolina. I've held chair positions of some other nonprofits, and I've run divisions at some pretty big businesses.
Okay. Were those just regular? Were those not libertarian nonprofits, or just other nonprofits, or political nonprofits, or?
So I was the chair of North Carolina, well, the co-chair for North Carolina and the chair of the Charlotte chapter of FAIR, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism.
Okay.
Daryl Davis's organization.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, and we did a lot of stuff there. We grew membership, we put on events, we raised a bunch of money, and then some of the structural stuff at the top caused them to, they didn't technically fold, but they moved the 501c3 into a different organization. And so some of the big backing that we had went away. We had 3 real successful years. We put on a major event, kind of at the peak of COVID in Raleigh, with Daryl Davis and Eric Holgis of Delta Ray.
Daryl Davis is a true American hero. I really, he's a great man.
He's we got to interview him with the LP Allies as well. Since I made the connection through FAIR, but I don't necessarily believe in heroes. Like it's good to look up to people. It's good to have role models, but I always worry with heroes. Like, they say never meet your heroes. You shouldn't put someone on too much of a pedestal. But if I had one, it would be Daryl Davis. And when you meet him and talk to him in person, it's all real. It's all simple to him. He doesn't understand why people are so impressed by what he's doing. He's just like, why wouldn't I go out and try to change the, white supremacist minds into, or go to KKK meetings? Like, well, I can think of reasons, Daryl, but
so you've run some nonprofit organizations, and you've been communications director of the LP in North Carolina. You've not been a state chair or county chair there, or?
I have not.
Have you run meetings?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I chair a few committees, and I've chaired other committees.
And run conventions, like, a convention with 1,000 people, which is what you'll have to do.
Indeed.
Yeah. So how did you get into the Liberty movement, Rob?
Yeah. So I didn't come from anywhere. I've always been a libertarian. I came from kind of a traditional Republican household, and I liked what they said were the ideals: small government, accountability, self-determination. You own yourself and your stuff. And then I got to high school, and the 2 issues that got to me, the one that bugged me the most, and I will say, like, I'm not a gay rights activist. I advocate for everyone's rights equally, but at the time, gay marriage was illegal, and I just couldn't rectify that in my head. Like, we're supposed to be for small government, but you're essentially saying that because you disagree with the morality of it, you want to prevent 2 people from entering into a contract. And that just seemed absurd to me. Like, and then I started thinking about, can you legislate morality? And I don't really think you can. And then the other one was the criminalization of marijuana. Like, I've lost 5 friends to drinking and driving, but alcohol is a nice taxable substance, So the prohibitions on alcohol were limited at best, but then they were putting people in jail for a long, long time for smoking some pot, and it just didn't work in my mind. So, I started thinking more and becoming more and more anti-government, pretty anti-war, but I didn't have a name for what I felt. And then during those 97, 98 presidential primary debates, watching Ron Paul, and it was like the
You
light
mean
turned on for
2008?
no, the 97, 98, he was in some debates there. Because that's the one where he was like, they talked to him about heroin, and he was like,
Oh,
"Do you use heroin?" No, I would.
well, you said presidential debates. Maybe there were other debates, but yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I realized I was a libertarian then, got to college, was very involved in the anti-war movement. I was in college during September 11th. That's when I discovered Reason magazine. They had it at my college library, which was pretty cool. I knew Walter Williams. I went to George Mason, and I majored in psychology and poetry writing, believe it or not. But my dad was like, you have one of the best economists on the planet at your school. And I was like, nah, I didn't know that. So I went and introduced myself. Dr. Williams, he was one of the kindest, most open people I've ever met. It's a stretch to say we were friends, but we got coffee a few times. He let me just come and sit for a few lectures. I discovered Austrian economics through him, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh gosh, yeah, Walter Williams. Yeah, just
Rest in peace.
rest in peace. Yeah, such a great guy. Yeah, it was. I think that was about 3 years ago. Yeah, but if you were George Mason, you had access to a lot of people.
Probably. I wasn't. I was much more in the like I wanted to get in trouble in college phase.
Okay.
Uh,
And of course, you were also, when the World Trade Center happened, you were of prime draft age.
yes, and certainly that was a big consideration. Um, I mean, for the people watching that remember it, like they say, never forget September 11th, but it wasn't just the attacks. It was that feeling of invulnerability that we kind of had was just gone, and then it's the last time, maybe the only time I remember, like for a little while we really came together as a country, and it was like it means something to be American. There's something to humanity that we're supposed to protect. Like if we're going to have values and ideals that are bigger than just ourselves, then we have to act in that way. And then Iraq, and Bush was able to pervert and corrupt that feeling in the worst possible ways, and he had everyone behind him, and you have the Patriot Act, and all of a sudden, all starts going the other direction, and then the global financial crisis hit, and I mean that really changed the trajectory completely.
That's true. Although, you know what, really, I think where people lost faith in Bush, though, was Hurricane Katrina. But anyway, uh, yeah,
That was
so yeah,
You're right, though. I mean, not to dismiss that, like that was a big moment because he went from exuding leadership. I mean, I know we look back and mocking him now, and the with the banner on the ship, what did it say? Like, I won the battle or something like that. Or mission accomplished. There it is, mission accomplished. And we mock that now, but at the time, like it seemed inspirational. And then Katrina hit, and it was like he seems kind of impotent and just. I mean, Kanye said George Bush doesn't care about black people. It's like the biggest news for days.
or when Barack Obama, who was in the Senate at the time, said the poor were abandoned long ago.
Yeah,
Just typical leftist boilerplate nonsense. But
but
anyway,
it
yeah,
worked.
but so what was your, at the time, what was your dad? You looked into foreign policy much at the time, or were you just, uh,
Yeah, I mean, so of every like policy plank that we could go into, I'd say foreign policy is probably my weakest for the simple reason that I don't believe in intervention whatsoever. So it never seemed to make sense. Like I've studied economics a whole bunch since then. I've studied a lot of social issues. But in terms of foreign policy, it's just like look at all these problems in the world that we're fixing because we caused them. And I've been a non-interventionist. I mean, from the beginning, it was just why is my money going to see American, our boys and girls die in some foreign country so that defense contractors and oil companies can jack up their returns?
yeah. Were there any particular books or anything else that you read or did or anything that might have influenced you?
Um, that's a good question. You know, I looking. I mean, I've read economics in one lesson. I read anatomy of the state. I've read a few of the others from here, over my time, but I haven't read as much libertarian literature as most, for the simple reason that I know what I believe. I've read all Mary Dr. Ruart's books. I think she's a good writer. She's very accessible. I read a lot of human psychology. My background's been in psychology. I mean, 30 years now too. And a big part of the reason that I would say I'm a libertarian is that I would argue there's only one truth to human behavior, and it's that we do what we're incentivized to do. And if you look at everything that's happened in our world on a mass scale, on a socialized scale, it's very easily explained to me by people following incentive structures. And when they're perverse incentive structures, you get perverse outcomes. So politicians are incentivized to hoard and consolidate power because they can sell that power to the highest bidder who wants to use it to jack up their returns. And we will never be a consideration for them, except insofar as they want to manipulate us with fear and division to get us to vote against the other team.
Who has influenced you in the world of psychology?
So, I mean, I'm probably like a foundational student of Jung. I love the collective unconscious. I love the idea of personality typing as a communication tool. I'm very much into cognitive behavioral psychology overall. Um, some of the traditional ones, I guess, I find Erickson to be interesting and his epigenetic principle, taking Freud's psychosexual, and then each stage you have to rectify this thing, and that leads to a major disorder. If you
Who's
don't,
Erickson?
Erik Erikson.
Eric Erickson. Okay. Yeah.
So contemporary slightly after Freud. Karen Horney had some interesting stuff. She was very much motivated by being anti-Freud, but they pushed each other to go pretty far. Then
Who
you get
is
into
that again?
Karen Horney,
Karen
Horney.
Horney. Okay. Yeah. Can
Because
you spell some of these names, please, just if anybody wants to look them up?
yeah, Karen Karen Horney Horney. Because Freud had his Oedipus complex, so she came up with the Electra complex.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, behavioral. You can always talk about Pavlov and Skinner, but the behavioral psychologists are interesting to me in that they explain very well a certain level of psychology, and a lot of that is what I think comes from our, we say it's the more ancient brain, but just the more of the hindbrain, the midbrain, less from the frontal lobes. Stimulus drives a reaction. And then in modern psychology, who do I follow? That's a tougher question. I can tell you all the studies I get into, the schools they come from. Um, I have some people whose names are saved on my whenever they put out a new lecture, I get the YouTube alert because I'm going to watch it. I'm very much into the relationship, I guess, between the frontal lobes, which is kind of what makes us human. It's your social interaction and interpretation, observation, and the amygdala, which is your emotional response to things. I think that drives like 95% of conscious human behavior. Um, whether it's through a fight or flight response, which I think is perhaps the reason for the state of things right now. I think politicians have learned that if you can get people afraid, then they will act, I don't want to say irrationally because it's rational for them in the moment, but against their best interests, um, out of fear. And
Yeah.
fight or flight is this interesting thing because historically, and I mean, over millions of years as we evolved, if a bear was chasing you, you got your fight or flight kicked in, you get this blast of norepinephrine and cortisol, you run for a long time, you burn it all off, and then you're okay. But now we get, breaking news, do, or a bad email from your boss or something like that, and it triggers this very ancient fight or flight response because it's effective, but it's not nuanced, so it doesn't understand the difference. And now we just sit with this anxiety. And that's why I think people start to act in these crazy ways, and in particular, keep voting for politicians that have never done a
Yeah.
thing for them.
This is something I've looked into. Is if they're in a state of fear and they're in a state of confusion, and the first thing that removes the state of fear, the state of confusion, they will latch onto that.
Yep.
And that's why sometimes you can use language. Uh, I don't know if you studied neurolinguistic programming, but you can use
I've come across it. I'm not
you
unfamiliar. I
can use
wouldn't say I'm a
yeah,
student
that's
of it.
also why I asked about Erickson, because my when I heard Erickson, my first thought was Milton Erickson. But anyway, uh, but yeah, you said Eric Erickson. But so you end up you figure out ways to confuse people, then you remove their confusion, and then you've got them, is what they often
Yep.
say. That's
Yep.
the
100%.
easiest way to do it. It's and until you're aware of what's happening, you don't really, because there's that quote from Mencken that I absolutely love. You know, have you studied Albert Ellis by chance?
I haven't. I've come across the name, but no, I can't say I have.
And of course, obviously, I'd ask about Nathaniel Brandon.
Which is
Well, he was a student of Ayn Rand.
oh no, I haven't. I haven't.
I'm
I've
surprised.
read all of
I'm
Ant-Man's stuff.
surprised you didn't know who he was, but oh wait,
I might have come across it. I will tell you this. I'm atrocious with names, period.
okay.
I coach youth soccer and youth wrestling, and the kids get devastated if you don't remember their names. I have to say them like 100 times at the first practice.
And that can be hard for kids, although it's when they realize you're doing it for everybody, they realize it's nothing personal. But
Yeah.
yes, but if you're aware of this quote from H.L. Mencken, which I've said on this show so many times, quote, the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed, parenthesis, and hence clamorous to be led to safety, parenthesis, by an endless series of hobgoblins, most of them imaginary, end of quotation.
And it's spot on. I mean, that is
Yeah,
the whole point. Who's the new boogeyman? What are we gonna name it?
we'll protect, the boogeyman. We'll protect you from the boogeyman. Uh, you know, so how do you think you can apply this knowledge to politics? Because I think politics is very much connected to people's psychology.
Uh, I I mean, I would argue it's like 100%. So so I professionally, like I'm in marketing and communications, and I think what we really need is like a targeted marketing plan. I think we need to look at different demographics and identify the issues that resonate with them. And then I think we need to start providing real solutions that resonate. Okay, this is your biggest concern. Let me explain to you how our philosophy takes care of that. And more than that, how the philosophy that you have been, you shouldn't say manipulated, but been told will help you is actually harming you and is working against your best interests. I think we need to stay consistent. I think we have to realize that people get very committed to these beliefs that they hold so dear that become a core part of who they are. They see it as their identity. You have to earn people's trust first, and then you break through. Um, you can't be yelling at them. You can't be telling them why they're wrong. You can't you can't argue. The best thing we can do first is listen. So as a party, we can reach out. I mean, there's so many things that the other two parties do that, granted, they have resources that are difficult, but we can start doing it. You can have focus groups, you can do polling, you can run surveys, and then you can respond in targeted ways so you get this really good return on your investment. And growth will then become exponential because as you begin to change people's minds, they become your missionaries essentially. And they're going out and spreading the good word because you've made believers of them with truth, with honesty. You've given them something to work for instead of something to run against. I think in the moment, fear will always be a more powerful motivator, but over time, hope or a positive something to work toward is always going to be what people prefer. Like you said, if you give them the reason to abandon that fear, then they're with you.
I think it depends on what their values are and what where they are in life. I I think what how can you explain the psychology of staying married to this system, which has obviously been destructive? I mean, these horrible two parties that just get worse and worse, and nobody really understands that they are just getting worse and worse, and that they will continue to get worse and worse.
So first of all, I do think it's worth pointing out as bad as things have gotten in a lot of ways, and as structurally unsound as we are as a country, and have been maybe ever. I mean, there have been other times that seemed bad in history that I wasn't here for, so I can't say from firsthand experience, but especially economically, things feel pretty bad right now. We're still the freest country probably in the history of the world, at least at scale. I mean, I'm sure you could find some other smaller examples for periods of time, but the first place to enumerate and express as our core value of the liberty and freedom of each human being. And that's what's led to a large degree the United States to be so successful in so many ways. If we don't acknowledge that, then it's hard to grasp why people do stay married to a system that is now undermining everything it's been based on. I think the system survives on nostalgia. I mean, maybe that's an imprecise way to say it, but make America great again. What does that mean? Like, what are we harkening back to the 50s? Most of the people weren't around in the 50s, or they were very, very young. They don't remember these things. Was it great in the 80s? There were things that were good, sure, but there were things that were really bad. The 90s, I liked the 90s. I was a teenager in the 90s, but there were some major issues going on in the 90s. There were a lot of freedom misses, let's say. So you have to appeal to people's self-interest, and to do that you have to show them how it's like the frog in boiling water, which is actually, for the record, a myth. A frog will definitely jump out of water when it's hot, but it's the death by a thousand cuts. And you have to say, here's where you were, and here's where you are now, and here's all the little things that have happened to get you to where you are now, and it's not a good place, and it's the trajectory is not getting better. And again, you have to just calmly repeat that message again and again and again. Find different ways to say it, earn people's trust, stay consistent. We have to show up for things. We can't be a party that says we're, about people's rights and then not show up to defend people's rights. Um, when you show up for people, when you put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, that helps earns people's trust. And that's how we start to grow registration in the voter base. Then we start implementing some of our policies and things get better. Then you've got people's attention for real on scale.
Okay, so what are some can you think of some successful conversion stories that you've done, or any time you've succeeded at that if you studied psychology? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. So there's one story that I love to tell. Because I feel like as a party, we should have like 95% of the black vote. Like, the other two parties have been at some point or another, to extensive, varying but extensive degrees, in favor of the subjugation of people based on race, or the politicization of race as a pawn to drive votes against the other party. And we, on the other hand, have stood for freedom and empowerment of every human being from the beginning. So this was a few years ago now. One of my children was starting high school and had a roller skating like social for the team she was on before school started. So I was there as a chaperone, and I'm sitting next to a table of like 7 black people, and there were like 5 black women who stayed sitting there. And I just turned to them and I was like, "Y'all mind if I ask you a question?" And I'm like this. I'm effusive all the time. I chat with people. But I said, when I say the word libertarian, what does that mean to you? And I got varied answers from like, you know, Republicans who like pot to um, sovereign citizens to like weird people in the mountains, but no one really articulated it. I was like, would you mind if I like tried to share with you some of the things I believe in? And we kept talking. I've stayed in touch with 3 of them, and so 2 years ago now, right? No, last year. It was last year. God, the year's not quite over yet. But our governor candidate, who actually set records for the number of votes received by a third party, all 3 of those women I stayed in touch with, were happy to tell me they voted for him. And then extrapolating that to a larger level, I was his campaign manager to start, and then transitioned over to be his comms director. I just didn't have time to do all the things I was doing because I was running too. But Kim Acker, who did an incredible job, took over as campaign manager, and I did the messaging stuff. And we were able to take some of these lessons and these ideas that I'm espousing, convert them into policy um, proposals and planks that resonated with people. We came up with catchy phrases for some of them. Fire the Uniparty was very popular, and again led to record-breaking number of third-party votes for both him and for our auditor candidate. Both got nearly 200,000 votes, significant percentages.
What were the percentages?
I want to say I should know off the top of my head. It was right around 4%, like 3.9 and 3.8 or 4.1 and 3.9, something like that.
Okay. Okay. So what do you who do you think has done really well at delivering the libertarian message, whether it be in politics or not in politics?
So in politics, I mean, obviously you have Ron Paul, is one of the better messengers we've ever had, and I think what resonates with people when Ron Paul speaks is how much he believes it. When he's saying things like end the Fed and replace it with nothing. If you cut out a cancer cell or tumor, you don't put something back in its place. Actually, I thought Gary Johnson was a really good messenger. I think that he perhaps relied too much on, because he had some, well, has a little bit of charisma and charm, and I think he relied on that too much. So like that, the quote unquote Aleppo moment, that's an unforced error. Like you should know, you should be able to answer that question. You should be ready for that coming through, especially running for president. I think Justin Amash is a fantastic messenger, and I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but when he brings the receipts, when someone's like, "Why didn't you say this about Biden?" and he's like, "Well, here's the 14 times that I did in this month," and it shuts him up. I think Larry Sharp's a really good messenger, and he's just out there constantly putting it out. Um, Spike Cohen, I mean, Spike is, he lives it. He's a fantastic communicator, and you can tell he cares about every person he comes in contact with. They're probably the best ones we have going right now, who are also sort of unsullied by any libertarian infighting. Because there are other good messengers, but some of them get caught up in the infighting, and that makes it hard to appeal to the broader audience.
Well, I naturally have to ask, what you, since I've done so many shows about this guy, and if you don't speak Spanish, that's fine. But this man in Argentina has certainly done some absolutely amazing things, uh, more successful than any libertarian anywhere by far. So,
And look
what
at
what what have you noticed from him?
what he's accomplished for real too. So not just messaging, not just electoral success, but cutting state agencies, you know, taking unemployment. I think their unemployment was like 37% and it's down at like 7%. Inflation dropped from hundreds of percent to single digits. Argentina's economy was doing really well. I know there's people that are like, well, what about the 20 billion they borrowed from the US? First of all, for country, 20 billion is not a huge amount. Second of all, it's going to take money and external investment to drive the changes at the level he wants. And third, he's fighting against actual socialists who had taken that country and driven it into the ground, which is a big part of the reason he was able to get his message through so well. And they are still working against him every step of the way. I'm not saying I'm in favor of bailouts, but I'm saying Javier Milei ran on, you know, I wiped my ass with the state and it worked. And now he's implementing policies and those policies are having success. And that's the sort of thing we need as an example we can point to. Hey, these are successful. Why don't we give them a try? Because what we're doing right now isn't working.
I'd like you to comment on some observations I've made.
Absolutely.
First of all, he was the lead singer of a Rolling Stone cover band. So, being lead singer of a band, he knows how to read a room. He knows how to play a crowd. Uh, he definitely, and he really just seems to have fun. Uh, he has he has managed to make activism fun to a certain degree. He can be kind of silly now and then, and but he can also be serious. And he's, and he doesn't go too far either way. So he doesn't, he isn't too silly that he drives away the serious people, and he isn't too silly that he isn't too serious that he drives away the silly people. Not to mention 77% approval now with Argentines under 30. It's absolutely remarkable. I do think that the fact that they have more of an open party system down there has helped him. That's something we can't change here. And also, and also that he probably faced more possible corruption though in other ways, and he's really learned how to use the new media. I mean, I think the main thing is he just goes out there and he has fun. He makes politics fun. He's not, and yet he's also very knowledgeable. And we don't get those people who know how to do that.
The mix is impressive. Yeah. So, interesting side note, I had no idea about the Rolling Stones band, cover band. That was the first band I ever saw live, was the Rolling Stones in like '93 with Counting Crows at RFK Stadium. They put on a good show. But it doesn't surprise me at all. And you raised the other side of the coin, which is very important to Malay's success, is that he's really smart and he's really well educated. He knows economics better than most, and he's not afraid to take those principles and put them into action. He believes in what he's saying. That shines through. And like you said, he does it with a smile. He flew commercial, and then he hung out with all the passengers.
He quit doing that, but he was doing that for a while. I think his security, he's gotten a lot more. I'm kind of sad to see it, but he's definitely gotten a little more closed off, which I understand. There was a rock throwing incident, so that's been the only thing that happened so far. And not to mention, he gave a speech on the 16th of September in Paraguay, 6 days after well, maybe it was the 15th, but 5 or 6 days after Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
And he was so somber. I mean, it was a completely different Milei speech. And I could tell it had affected him. I don't know how well he knew Charlie, but, I didn't want to go off on that tangent, but I definitely think he's aware of something that might happen, especially after, what they've done with Bolsonaro in Brazil and Miguel Uribe in Bolivia. But yeah, so but anyway, so yeah, I think he still realizes he has to get out there. He has to be of the people. It's
for sure.
I think
one
also,
thing that, go ahead.
I think also the fact that he came from a pretty common background helps. So he still knows how to relate to those people. I've said after all this, I said we should get rid of the porcupine and replace it with a lion. We should. Another thing too, with the cover band selection, I said we need to abandon classical liberal and start calling ourselves rock star liberals.
I like that.
The classical liberal is just, we're has-been liberals, we're old liberals, we're irrelevant liberals. That's what it means.
So I'm with you there, and it doesn't matter anymore. One thing, because there's the lib socks, and I hate that they use the term socialism, and I understand its origins and it doesn't mean what it means now. The fact of the matter is, most people, when you say socialism, they think of the state control of everything and the redistribution of everything. There's no private property ownership. With libsocs, there's no state. The state can't own everything. To the degree that it's collectivist, it's voluntarist, it's cooperativist. But when you're saying socialism, then you're spending all the time you need to explain to people what the difference is. And this is where words matter. This is where messaging matters.
Well, there's that old, what you kind of call libertarian, Robert Owen and New Harmony, Josiah Warren, and some people who tried experimental communities that were somewhat communal. It's kind of forgotten in history, but there were several experimental communities like that in the 1800s, and I think they all failed though because they didn't understand economics, but they were attempts. Communal living, small scale socialism, which is essentially voluntary. I mean, nobody's forced to stay there, which is, I think, one. Yeah. So,
and if socialism is going to work, it has to be like my family is very socialist.
Yeah.
But the incentive is we're all working for the same thing. I mean, so small scale, sure.
every family is socialist in a way. Yeah, that's true. It's somewhat socialist, somewhat fascist, but it works. It's but
That's
yeah.
a good point. My wife's a fascist dictator.
Well, in some cases too, there's the whole thing about time preference, especially that's involved with relationships like this. You know, having not been a parent, it's more important that your kids like you when they're 40 years old than if they like you now.
I tell my kids all the time, I prefer that they like me, but I don't care. I'm there to be their parent, not their friend, and I hope that I impart enough lessons that they can take with them to be successful adults.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, how old are your kids, by the way?
17 and 11.
What have you told them about politics?
So my eldest child is actually looking to go to school and study political science and wants to become a very active libertarian. So I've told her something wrong because she should have been running the other way.
Yeah. What books have they read or anything like that? Or have you given them any books? You just kind of let them figure it out on their own?
I mean, we talk about it a lot. It's a constant discussion point here. My younger one, we homeschool and we use the Tuttle twins. And actually one of my proudest moments is we did an Alaskan cruise with my whole in-laws family to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary last summer. And my son was 10 at the time and was just talking to this older couple across the pool on the top deck. I was like, oh, so I went over to see what he's talking about. And he was explaining to them why the Federal Reserve is the root of all evil in the United States. And really one of my proudest moments as a parent, like almost teared up, like heart warmed, like you keep going, you get it. So thank you, Connor Boyack.
You can give them my novel Escape from the Village, but also I think another great book for about that age, uh, Isabel Patterson, The God of the Machine.
We have it. We have it. I haven't read.
That
I'm
is a
glad you said it.
fantastic book. Yeah.
Okay, we haven't read it yet. It's there.
Yeah, because it just explains capitalism and freedom and in terms that are simple enough. It's somewhat historical. She was so brilliant. I mean, I'm glad you know about her because it's definitely something that because there's some books here that are kind of forgotten. I
I
came
actually go ahead.
I
Go
came
ahead.
to libertarianism you kind of via history, so that was how it went for me. To study American history and learn all about all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, we discovered Isabel Patterson because Amazon recommended it based on our other purchases.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It means it works. Good
Yeah,
for them. Yeah.
the algorithm knows.
I'm glad the algorithm knows. The algorithms on some other things are horrible. Yeah.
You're not kidding there. We also, I mean, poetry writing, I studied, but I have a literary background. I read a lot of just classical literature. And up until recently, most literature trended libertarian because it was honest. You read The Giver or Number the Stars or even like Johnny Tremaine and The Red Badge of Courage. Um, and even some of the ones that, the Pull at Your Heartstrings, The Bridge of Terabithia, where the red fern grows, there's this strong individualist sentiment. The human aspect of things matter, taking accountability for who you are. The pearl, the 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 destructive force of unfettered and unchecked power and greed put together. Um, and this is what this is our literary curriculum for homeschooling, and the lessons are inherent. Socialism only works if you ignore every single truth about human behavior.
The Giver is a wonderful book, and I need to finish off that series. And definitely read the book. Don't watch. I did not see the movie just because I respected the book. Uh, they disrespected it way too much. So also, I also did read the. I guess there's been new books, but I did read the Three Hunger Games books.
Another fantastic one. And
Yeah,
so District 13 is North Carolina, which I love.
I thought it was West Virginia, but anyway.
Is it? And then District 12 is North Carolina.
District 12 is West Virginia. Yeah, District 13, that's right, is
It's something like that.
the
But
capital.
I
Yes.
love the rebellious spirit. I love my state. But yeah, the Hunger Game books. So I've only seen the movies. I confess. My wife read the books, and then she watched the movies, which got me into it. And then she was like, "The movies actually do a pretty good job. There's a lot more in the books, but they're true to it." And so then I was like, if I read it, I'm just going to know what happens, and it'll frustrate me. They're on my Kindle. I'll get to them.
The books cover a lot more of her moral dilemmas.
Oh, okay.
They're all written in the first person present tense. They added some scenes, for example, in the movie where Katniss isn't there and those scenes don't appear. What I was afraid of, and they did this, they ended up just focusing so much on the battles and not as much on the other things.
Because it's good cinema.
Yeah, well, and it's easier to translate that. Katniss is very much a character. She's really going through a lot of moral. You can tell she's fighting. She has these dilemmas going on in her mind. I think she actually is in a lot of ways like a an Ayn Rand hero, in which she's thinking about rational self-interest. But the one big difference is she's an Ayn Rand hero who also loves her family, and that's something Ayn Rand never managed to accomplish.
I just reread The Fountainhead. You're not wrong.
I think she's really motivated by just the love of her father. She loves her father and wants to do what he did and be kind of be the dad. It's some of the characters like the Hob. I will say one thing. I thought the one thing I think where the movies failed was they did not quite get the two most intense scenes in the first book are the scene where she's with Rue and the scenes where she's with Thresh. And they did not, the books got the intensity of those scenes and the movies did not.
Okay.
And those are really moving moments. And it's really interesting, just to look at them. I think Sutherland did Snow very well.
He's an awesome actor.
Oh, he's been an amazing actor. Yeah. That's one thing I've learned about movies. The villain is always the most important character.
Oh, of course.
If you've got a good actor playing the villain really well, it goes. Because everybody's motivated by not liking him. But yeah, it was.
And it makes the hero's conquest that much more significant.
The other thing too is I think Suzanne Collins would actually be horrified if you told her that Katniss was like a Randian hero. I don't think that's what she was going for.
No, you're probably right. But she was being honest, and that's the thing. When you're honest, that's what it all comes back to.
Well, that's the thing too. This is a crony capitalist society. It's not. You have these where everything's regulated. And there's all this black market with food and selling stuff, and the Hob, as they call it, and where this big black market is, where everybody trades stuff. Yeah, so
good series. I don't like calling us a capitalism. I think there's a capitalistic aspect, but we're like an oligarchy or a kleptocracy right now.
We are, really just seeing, where were all the capitalists? Where were all the big billionaires during COVID? They all tacitly
approved. John Galt.
The most famous or richest business name who spoke out against the coronavirus stuff was David Neeleman, and he's the founder of JetBlue. And so he's not that big, but he was speaking out against it. But yeah, most people don't even know who he is. But people know who JetBlue is, and he's founded a lot of airline companies. But yeah, that's so. What are some other good stories that you think portray the? Because we need as many libertarian novelists as we can get.
Well, I don't know if people know this, but Tolkien was an avowed anarchist by the end of his life, very much an individualist, very Catholic, and that influenced his writing. But The Lord of the Rings, the books and the movies, because I think those movies, they take some liberties for time, but they stay very true to the book and some of my favorite books. I think everyone should read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
I've heard people say that about Tolkien. I hear the same thing about C.S. Lewis as well.
He was going to be my next one. He was born again, and his religion sort of dominated every aspect of his life. He wrote some brilliant stuff on like the nature of humans and exploring human psychology and human behavior. Um, I love The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the whole series, Chronicles of Narnia series, but C.S. Lewis definitely falls into that. Some of the other people who I think wrote from an individualist aspect, this coming of age aspect, I mean, Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens,
Yeah.
very much, um,
Mark Twain is just, he's so American.
in every
Really,
way, quintessential.
really the first, really one of the first. Yeah. And I think he's exposes the hypocrisies, but sees the good things too. It's, yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe too. Um, I know he did it from a horror bent, and he kind of invented the detective story. But there was also a lot of this reflection on corruption of things at the top, the degradation of the human spirit, and he was super rebellious. He got thrown out of, I don't know if it was VMI or the Citadel, but whatever army school he was at. So he came down for dinner and didn't have his gloves on, and they sent him up for dinner to put his gloves on, and he came down naked except for his gloves, and that's what got him expelled. Of course, he had his demons, severe alcoholism, probably opium, and then
Yeah.
just was found in a ditch and died 4 days later.
He was only 40 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't realize the whole, yeah, you find these stories of people going to military schools and whatever, and they're just completely rebellious. It's rather wild, the stories do.
Well, it's an interesting, like, matter.
Said he went to UVA and then University of Virginia. But yeah,
Maybe he enlisted.
yeah.
Um, I think that because there's a lot of veterans in the liberty movement and the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, he also was in the Army. He got all the way to sergeant major. Yeah.
Before he was starting, yeah, he was doing. I mean, he's super smart. He did well. He understood people. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that there are a lot of people, and especially when you're born an American. So I think people are born with this proclivity for liberty. We understand inherently, like at our deepest level of consciousness, that we're accountable for ourselves and we're responsible for ourselves. And so when that gets fostered with, stories of the American dream, American founding, the American frontier, and not that those stories are, we certainly, let's say, get a one-sided version of those when we're younger, but I don't think that takes away from the power of the story. And so people join the military because they want to defend freedom and liberty, and then they realize they've had this wool pulled over their eyes, like, you're out there fighting in a different country to protect corporate interests. You're not fighting for freedom. And then they come back, but they're some of the most diehard libertarians I know.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how veterans have changed. Uh, the World War II vets were not like that. But yes, I'm glad to see it.
They were fighting for freedom, even if it was in another country. There was an existential evil. I know that we get so into sort of pedantic discussions of World War II, and that's fine. Now you should look back and break down every single angle so you can do better. But at the time, in people's minds, it was pretty clear there was evil and there was good, and we were fighting for good against something evil.
Yeah. Were there any other novelists we or writers we should have mentioned? You wanted to mention, or
I mean, how long do you want to go? Dostoevsky, he I think he's maybe the best
yeah,
writer that ever lived.
I
Um,
mean, as far as libertarian values, I mean, I don't
I
know what What about Tolstoy?
and I was gonna say Tolstoy next, but Dostoevsky for me, because he went to the Gulag, well, not the Gulag then, but he was in Siberia in a prison camp, I think for 7 years or something, and he was on his way to be hung when his sentence was commuted, and that changed him dramatically, and he wrote incredibly individualistic. Um, The Grand Inquisitor, which is a chapter in Brothers Karamazov, which I've argued is the single best piece of literature ever written. I wrote a whole article about it because
Yeah,
it's a poem that um, Dmitri, I believe, wrote a prose poem about Jesus returning during the Inquisition, and just through the power of being Jesus, all these people who are in the despair of the Inquisition and bodies burning and the terror of the Inquisitor, and they just flock to Jesus. but then the Inquisitor has them arrested and basically says, "How dare you try to bring them freedom?" And he excoriates Jesus in particular for not accepting the devil's bargain when Jesus was fasting in the desert. Like, how dare you give these people free will? You think you give them freedom. I give them the freedom of my security, and you should have taken that. Um, I would encourage everyone to read it because it's one of the more liberty-based writings in history, I think.
Yeah, there are so many. You know, I really wonder what happened to Russia because it seemed like there was a lot of interesting things happening in Russia. You know, Marxism happened, but if Marxism hadn't happened, I think they might have went in a really positive direction.
I agree.
I
I agree
mean,
completely.
not Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and also, anarchists like Bakunin and Kropotkin. I mean, just really was really kind of sad. And anything else you want to mention? Ayn
Um,
Rand was also a big fan of Victor Hugo.
I like Victor Hugo. Um, I like Victor Hugo a lot. I guess if you fast forward, Tim O'Brien wrote The Things They Carried. He talks a lot about war and sort of the tragedies of war. I don't know how libertarian he is in his other stuff, but he certainly has a we shouldn't just be rushing to go to war. It's not a good thing. Bent in his stories. Um, Other contemporary authors. One who I think again the truth shines through, like you said with Susan Collins, but John Updike has a very libertarian bent when he writes these individual characters and sort of
Mhm.
suffering the or well, not suffering, but living through the consequences of their actions, positive or negative. The whole Rabbit Run series. Um, Cormac McCarthy, Robert Heinlein. Everyone should just read tons of Heinlein. Starship Troopers is amazing, and the movie's pretty awesome too. I thought because I thought it captured the implied absurdity, but not. It was tongue in cheek. Not that it doesn't take itself seriously, but it wants you to understand that you're being mocked for participating. But then some of his quips about like voting is violence and to be a citizen is to have violence because you vote in a way that will impart violence on other people. Like his insights are unreal. Um,
Yeah, Heinlein is interesting. Yeah, I've not read. Well, I tried. Yeah, so and there were a lot of books there too. Yeah, so
yeah, yeah, he was prolific.
yeah, some of these people just write books like crazy. It's amazing how they do that. I don't know how much if Rand influenced him or not. I don't.
You
I
have
never.
to imagine she did in one way or another. You couldn't
Yeah,
be an author writing politics at that time and not have at least read what she wrote.
yeah. Rand was more about heroic characters. That's why she liked Victor Hugo. I know she was also a big fan of Mickey Spillane.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I've never read Spillane. I
Yeah.
am familiar.
Yeah, I think she also, liked stories that were clear where it was clear who good and evil were. So and it was good
Okay.
versus evil. So, it really there's a lot of novels that, because there's always a good often, good and evil in a novel. So
Well, Hugo did that, but he loved to take someone who you would have thought would have traditionally been in an evil position and be that's the good character.
yeah, I should probably read more Victor Hugo. I'm not sure where to start. Rand was a big fan of 93, so
Albert Camus, there's another one. I mean, he was an existentialist, but I think there's a
yeah.
lot of libertarianism. I
Is
read,
that
um
CAMUS?
yes, correct.
I just want to make sure people get the spelling. So if they try to look, because they might try to look up these people and wonder,
So
yeah,
I'm trying to think of the name of Camus' book. It might be The Plague. I might be getting the translation wrong, but I read that during the COVID lockdowns, and it was about a place, a city on the sea, I think in Spain, um, but a walled city that had a plague outbreak, and they locked everyone in and out and just showed the chaos of this like attempt to manage things top down and how it goes wrong in every single way.
there was the plague,
Yeah, then that's what it was called. Okay.
just the plague. Yes, it's yeah. Well, I don't get that many people in here read lots of books, so it's always
I it's all I did. I mean,
yeah.
who wrote Candide, um, starts with a V. Why can't I think of his name? His biographer was the one that attributed the quote. I disagree with what you say, but I'll die for your right to say it. Oh my gosh. How can I not think of his name? I'm looking this up. It's gonna bug me.
Yeah, there's there's yeah, I've certainly heard. I gotta ask you, and at the same time,
Voltaire, sorry.
I've often said that probably nobody did more to promote socialism than Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
I mean, and never by saying I'm a socialist, but he just wrote all these stories about how horrible,
Tale of Two
Ebenezer
Cities
Scrooge or whatever.
especially.
Well, that's the story that everybody knows.
And so in terms of spreading socialism, though, I'm agreeing with you completely because that I mean, in a lot of ways, that kind of sparked the modern labor movement. It borrowed from philosophies, and certainly Marx loved to talk about labor and bougie and the proletariat. But I've I don't know. I don't want to say I've read a lot of Marx because people that have read Marx have read a lot of Marx, but I've read more than most. Um, because I'm just like, how can people believe this? But he's selling a dream. He's a good marketer.
Yeah, he's selling a dream, all right. Uh, yeah, there's been a lot of, so who do you think has done, who are some people in the Libertarian Party over the years that you think did a really, really good work? I mean, past chairs or past or anybody.
That's a tough question. There's been a lot of people that have done a lot of good work at a local level. I want to say this carefully about everyone because I think that, again, we were talking about heroes. Don't meet your heroes. People are imperfect, and there's always going to be starts and stops. But let's start with contemporary. I think right now, maybe no one is doing more for the liberty movement than Spike Cohen. And he's an excellent messenger. And every time you hear him talk, he's on point. But he stopped trying to be a messenger, and instead he's living his principles, and that gets people, and he is showing up. He's not asking what party you're in. He's saying, wait, the state's trying to take your child based on a made-up illness. We will be there and we will fight for you. Wait, the cops went after you and assaulted you and ended up with your service dog dying because you're a homeless vet. We're not going to give up until you get justice. And we would all be well served following in Spike's example and just sort of being the best you can with what you have. I think if you start to move back, I mean, how do you not start with Ron Paul? Just the motivation that he's given, if to no one else, people in the party who follow him, um, and his way of articulating libertarian ideals and principles in an accessible manner, a digestible manner, ways that resonate with quote unquote normies, which
Yeah.
I don't think is a derogatory term, but it's a funny term to me.
Who do you think is
Um,
doing a good job in the party as a in a party office or running as a candidate for the party?
well, running as candidate, so Gary Johnson, I think, probably was our best
Yeah.
candidate we've ever had. And like I said, that Aleppo moment, unforced error, but I mean, he was really running a good campaign. And again, it came down to messaging and showing up.
Yeah.
I think Chase Oliver's done a pretty good job. I'm a big Chase fan, and I loved his Senate run and showing up and debating the empty dais
Yeah.
where Herschel Walker was supposed to be. That made a big difference. We have a number of unheralded, if you will, local politicians who have won their races. Uh, right now, one of the people who I have been very lucky to get to know in the past year and been impressed with is Sean Kennedy, chair of the American Liberty Caucus.
Mhm.
Um, and he's doing the work and holds office. I think Kara Scholes like should get a medal for everything that she's done over the years for the party and work to help other people learn. She's gotten elected. She does candidate training. She's had so much success in what she's done. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm being put on the spot here, and I want to be
Yeah.
careful about what I say.
Sometimes,
Uh,
after what Chase almost seems too nice for politics. You know, when Chase was running for the Senate, I joking, I was actually serious to him. I said, Chase, accidentally call him OJ, Herschel Walker. I said, do that a few times. Just accidentally call him OJ. I said, because I think that would probably either drive him nuts, or it would create this association of him with OJ Simpson, which would not be good, But, but
Jace,
but Chase was too nice. Chase is too nice to do something like that.
he can sneak it in though. Did you see his recent tweet at Lindsey Graham from one gay to another? Um, Talking about when Lindsey Graham was calling for, I think, for war with Venezuela or something, and Chase said,
Yeah,
"Hey, from one gay to another, maybe let's." And I laughed so hard at that because I was like, way to like have your finger on the pulse of the way to get through to people. You're not being derogatory about anything, but you're pointing out wild hypocrisy from Lindsey Graham. I loved that.
yeah,
Um, I don't know, in recent years, I mean, it's no secret, like there's been a lot of infighting, and that's been a big distraction from people that are doing good work or could have been
yeah.
doing good work. We spend a lot more time fighting with each other than fighting with the uniparty.
If there's anything I wish, one thing I don't know how much he tried to do, but when Chase got the nomination, I remember thinking, okay, he's 39, and we've got 5 people running who are 70 plus. This is it's obvious what you need to do here, Chase. Go after everybody who's young, who's your age or younger.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
When
I remember thinking, oh, Chase, this is the first time I voted for a presidential candidate who's younger than I am. I guess that makes me old.
That's true. I never
Yeah.
thought of that, but you're right. Same, 100% same. That's a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I actually, I mean, right now, I think Justin Amash is doing some pretty awesome stuff. I, I'm not endorsing anyone or picking any favorites, and there's a long time to go. But as things stand right now, I would not be unhappy at all to see him go after the presidential nomination for the party. And he's got some of the bona fides to go with it, at least on paper. I think that matters. He
I,
understands
I would
how
I would be
the
in
chain
favor.
works.
Rob, one thing I do have to say, and I think as chair, uh, as LNC chair in the LNC, and I've brought this issue up. How easy will it be for us to attract good presidential candidates after what's happened recently? I mean, I hope, obviously, if you're going to be LNC chair, I hope that well, you might not be, you might not be LNC chair then, but I hope that if you're LNC chair, you're going to support our presidential nominee no matter what.
So when you say no matter what, there are a couple of
Yeah.
caveats. If we somehow nominate by some weird twist just some horrible person, then I would keep my mouth shut.
What's your definition of a horrible person?
Like
That's a very open.
a convicted murderer or something. When I
Okay,
say
yeah,
horrible, I mean extreme.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah, yeah. No, fair
Rob,
point. Fair point.
there were some people who decided that Chase Oliver was a
No,
horrible
no,
person.
no, not like that. Not someone I
You know,
disagree with some of their policies or something. I mean, an actual like you have a
I
criminal background in the
yeah,
most
I don't think
distasteful way.
somebody like this is going to get. I don't think somebody like this is going to get nominated. At
I
least I
don't
hope
either.
that doesn't happen. But who knows?
I 100% agree with you. I don't think so either. I only put the caveat in because I can imagine a scenario where I'm like, yeah, I'll back the nominee no matter what, and then I'm chair, and all of a sudden we get convicted. I shouldn't laugh about it. It's
Yeah,
so implausible, but
yeah,
that's the only case
it
where
is
I wouldn't.
implausible. But yeah, but then you make a very wide open. You made a very vague, wide open qualifier there, which is wide open.
When I say horrible, I mean
Yeah,
extreme, like a Six Sigma event, documented criminal background of harming people in some way.
yeah. But like I said, I'm hoping somebody like that doesn't get our
I don't think
nomination.
they will.
You know,
And on the flip side, to your earlier question about attracting a good candidate, there are some hurdles that we need to overcome as a party right now. We're doing a little soul searching that we need to figure out. I think getting someone like Justin Amash flips that script immediately. All of a sudden, we have a fantastic, polished, experienced, successful candidate who the party can unite around.
And I have to say, Rob, maybe it's something that's kind of become a pet cause for me because two years ago I decided I was going to interview every Libertarian Party presidential candidate, and I got to this point where I was getting to the point like, oh no, there's another one, and I'm just thinking, why do we have all these people running for president? And especially when so many of these people have never run for anything else. They haven't even run for city council or county commissioner, and now they decide they want to run for president. Yeah, that's one reason why I would like to see a MASH run, because if a MASH ran, we'd probably weed out some of these other people wouldn't even bother.
Yeah, yeah.
We had three people running in 2004. I think we had two or three in 2000, and yet we had what, a dozen in 2024. What? It's just so much wasted effort.
It's I think there's more to your point too, because if you haven't run for office, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. And you find out that there are lots of things you have to go through. As I said, it's like, I've never climbed a mountain before. I'm going to go to Everest.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me jump on the biggest one imaginable.
Yeah.
That's
every mountain. I mean, most mountain climbers, they start out with, they'll go, oh, we'll go 10,000, then we'll go 15,000, then we'll go 20,000. Then maybe we'll go to Everest.
Start off with a rock wall,
Yeah.
So I've run for mayor twice and North Carolina House once, and I managed and then worked on a governor campaign. So the campaign side, and also worked very hard on Chase's campaign in North Carolina
Yeah.
from the state party perspective. I got to interview Chase 3 times, which is cool. But the campaigning side of things, I'm very well versed in how much it takes. And it's an immense amount of resources. You need money and you need volunteers and you need a lot.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I think if you see how much, if you run for governor, you're going to see, well, geez, running for governor, it takes this much work. How much more is it going to take to run for president?
That times 50.
Yeah. I think that was who are some other LP officials that you think have done really good work as LP officials? Who was a good chair in your view? Or what did any of our chairs do well that you'd like to emulate?
So I think I told you off camera that I did make a pledge a year ago that I'm not going to say anything bad about any libertarians. And one of the tough things with evaluating a chair is that it's always the totality of his or her work. So there are good things and there are bad things, and there are always things out of people's control. I think that starting with Stephen Nikela, I think he's done a pretty good job coming into unfavorable circumstances and slowly getting the party back towards being unified around being libertarian, if nothing else. And it's a monumental task, but I applaud him for his attempts. Certainly Angela is one of our more controversial chairs.
I'm trying to stick to only stuff that I know to be true. And I look back from the Reno reset to when Angela quit, and I think I saw 3 people get hired and leave. If you cannot, maybe, you might make a bad hire, but if you have a pattern of not being able to keep people, that is on you.
It's a problem.
And not to mention, I don't think she didn't seem to want to perform a lot of the duties that were in the job description.
I think that, again, just the outsider looking in, but from what I could see, the foundational motivator was fostering division and driving people apart further. And I just don't think that's a way to run a party. Like, we should be aggressively attacking bad ideas and defending our ideas. But we got so caught up in the 5 to 15% of stuff where we disagree and ignoring the 85% where we're all in agreement. And we also did it in a philosophical or hypothetical context. So it's like you see right now the anarchist versus minarchist argument is popping back up in some places.
Yeah.
And it's such a waste of time. Like, really, we're arguing about anarchism versus minarchism when ICE is snatching people off the street without due process, and we're blowing up boats,
Mhm.
and we're buying stakes in public companies, and we're having tariffs and then being told that they're removing the tariffs to lower prices, but the tariffs didn't drive prices up because the other countries pay for that, but we're going to remove the tariffs to lower prices somehow. And before that, I mean, when Biden was president, yeah, he's literally trying to mandate this experimental medical procedure where the manufacturer is protected from liability, that had no history of efficacy or safety testing. And, to be fair, there's a significant portion of the party that was standing up against that, and a significant portion I did think
Yeah.
dropped the ball on that messaging, but we're still fighting with each other instead of standing up against that. And we need to be aware of the reality of the current situation, and we need to focus on the things that we can affect change immediately. This pie in the sky stuff it's fun to talk about on like a Friday night, but it's not going to
Yeah.
result in success.
And I am not mad at anybody if they want to leave the Libertarian Party and go work go do what Spike is doing, or if they want to go to work for the Marijuana Policy Project, or go to work for U.S. term limits, or go to work for some other cause that I do think does promote liberty. I think that's fine. If they just think, I don't think I've certainly heard, Eric, I've certainly heard people say that they felt like they were making better use of their time elsewhere. I get that, because there are lots of, and the whole coronavirus thing, and all this stuff. I think, you got to remember too, a lot of times what's going on with the various think tanks and organizations, those just come into the LP because people are just following their favorite think tanks.
Yeah.
But then they all come together into this party, and it's like, whoa, because I'm mad at some of the people in the Libertarian Party for not really speaking out against coronavirus nonsense, but I also got to blame the people at the think tanks. I mean, people, Penn Jillette was a major disappointment. David Bose, who had an amazing record, and then just
was he the one that actually wrote the Libertarian case?
David Bose after 2019. I'm just going to forget everything after 2019 for David Bose. Yeah.
Well, there's that one essay. I think it came out of Cato. It might have been Bose, but like the Libertarian case for vaccine mandates. Like, there's no Libertarian case for vaccine mandates. There's none.
There isn't. Yeah.
Zero. That is impossible. There are a lot of different policy positions you can justify within our philosophy, especially if you're looking at an incrementalist approach. There's no room for vaccine mandates anywhere.
Yeah, and the other thing that got me too was the whole thing. I'm like, wait, when did libertarians start to trust the news media? You're trusting the news media now? I also think, having grown up as a teenager in the 80s, watching all the hysteria about AIDS, kind of inoculated me against this. I said, well, they're going to overblow something again. And they did. And they really did. But we went in on it. And to me, the Reno reset doesn't happen without coronavirus.
No, for sure. I mean, that was a big motivator for a lot of people getting that. That's what really kicked me in.
People got more involved and people were angry.
I was among them. Because again, I got kids and I was like, you want to mandate? We already have a vaccine schedule that I'm not thrilled about all of it. And now you're going to mandate this experimental stuff where we really have no idea the safety of the efficacy. And on kids who were at essentially zero risk from COVID, but the vaccines have vaccine, I should say, in quote, the jab was presenting some serious risk. I mean, that's a scary thing. There's no libertarian that should have supported that.
I think, having been, I got bit by a dog. We never found the dog when I was 11. And so, yes, got the rabies shots.
And I think that was probably a wise decision.
And I would do that again.
Yeah.
The rabies vaccine is well over 100 years old now. It's something that's been tested and safe, and not getting it. I was talking to an associate of mine, and he was talking about how he was not going to get his dogs vaccinated against rabies. I'm like, what? First of all, you don't know what that dog's going to do. He might get bit by a squirrel or a raccoon or
And you
something.
wouldn't know.
You have no idea. I said,
And then it gets you.
get those dogs vaccinated. Oh, I was so yeah. I know. Yeah, I know you got to pay money and somebody profits off of it, but there is a benefit here.
Sure, that's how everything
It's
is.
not just all about profiteering for no reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, get your dog the rabies vaccine.
When we start talking about vaccines, I feel like maybe put less effort into arguing against like MMR and more effort
Yeah,
into like the pneumococcal meningitis one.
yeah,
When you're vaccinating for something that has an almost 0% chance of affecting someone with real side effects, all of a sudden your risk profile has become the risk is greater than the benefit.
yeah. And I did get the antibodies test after a while. Said yes, you have the antibodies. So
There you go.
the COVID antibodies. Yeah, I'm thinking it might have happened after the Austin Tantra Festival, which was in late 2019.
Okay.
A Tantra Festival, of course. Where everybody's getting all touchy feely, so to speak.
I've had COVID a few times.
Oh wow, a few times. That's not fun. I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, so I've actually tested
I
positive.
actually don't know if I've ever if I've had it for sure because I never.
Okay. I have 8 times that I've tested positive, but I've only had symptoms 3 times.
I don't know what to tell you about that.
I just and PCR testing can be the rapid response ones are probably a little more accurate, but we got so many of the free, because everything's free when they say it,
You
but the
know,
tests sent in the mail and they're just there. So every time I get a cold, I'm just bored and I'm like, if I get COVID, then I can probably get out of work for a couple days.
I was working at the Texas blockchain. I think it was the Texas blockchain summit. And I was helping out at the door with them. And for a while, they had a metal detector, and they could turn that thing up or turn it down. And literally, like one day they were searching everybody, and so they just turned it down, and suddenly it wasn't flagging nearly as many people. I so wish that Kerry Mullis had been alive in 2020. He's the guy who invented the PCR test.
Yep.
But I didn't want to go down this, and I'm not going to begrudge. And there were other people criticizing. Well, you went and got vaccinated. I said, I don't care if you went and got vaccinated. All I care about is whether or not you want to force a vaccine on me.
Yep, 100%.
That's all that matters. Is there any what are some strategies that you think are effective, or some strategies that you think with the LP ought to scrap? I've certainly got my list of things I want to scrap, but yeah.
Scrap. That's interesting. I've never been asked that question or
activism that's not effective. I would say get rid of the Nolan chart, but that's something that I don't think is effective. So
I think that we need to, like I said, abandon sort of what we see as this principles based, like hypothetical way of approaching things. And we need to deal with the reality of the world right now.
yeah.
So like I've been in multiple discussions with libertarians and normies where it very quickly turns into like it was amoral or immoral no matter what to drop the bomb on Japan, or we need to repeal the Civil Rights Act. And it's like, okay, I understand those cases, but that's not what we should be leading with. We should be talking about look how expensive everything is, and it doesn't have to be that way. And look how the Federal Reserve is actually doing this to you. Look how our policies will make your lives affordable. Plus, you get to keep everything you earn. That resonates for people. Kitchen table stuff. Bill Clinton got it. It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah,
Like
things that are on people's mind.
100%. 100%. If you lead with we need to repeal the Civil Rights Act, you've already lost 90% of the people you're talking to.
I favor drug legalization, but I don't think that many people are ever thinking that much about legalizing drugs. I think, and I really think, I think our most successful gubernatorial candidate Donald Rainwater in 2020 got all those votes because he talked about the COVID policies. And
Yep. Yep.
all of these people went out and voted for him because of that. And I said, I wish we could have had a lot more Donald Rainwaters in 2020.
And there's a reason that, like, people don't like to be in this sort of dystopian leaning totalitarian hellhole.
Yeah.
It
Some
messes up their
some of them
lives.
don't.
That's an interesting point. I do reflect on that. I don't know that anyone likes it. I think that some people are terrified to not be in it, and that's by design. So they might prefer it. But because the thing is, freedom is scary, especially at first. And that's a hurdle we have to overcome too. And we have to explain that freedom is scary until you realize that the alternative is just as bad. They just dress it up better. I think that'll go a long way with people, and I think that's in terms of things the LNC can do. I think we can really revamp our messaging. I think we need like a full-fledged marketing machine that works with all of the affiliates. So we help tailor messaging. We provide research and feedback on messaging for what's working and what doesn't, and give the states the tools that they need to succeed in each of their localities, each of their respective local affiliates. And it's not that they can't do that themselves, it's that if they're also putting the resources into doing it, from soup to nuts, from the beginning to the end, then they're wasting resources too. And if we have 50 affiliates doing that, and however many local affiliates, county affiliates doing it under them, that's an incredible inefficiency. Whereas I think the LNC can provide some foundational tools to really make that more efficient, and then the resources go farther and more effective. Um, I think that success is a really good marketing tool, and it breeds more success. I think the LNC, like one of the things in the last presidential election that intrigued me to no end was Lahr's idea of, I just want to win one electoral vote, and I want to put all my resources into that. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. I don't know if that is the best implementation of that strategy, but a couple of successes at the federal level that get some press, I think will really drive a whole lot more success, actually winning a US House race, actually winning an electoral vote, covering the spreads in some Senate votes so that, we have to get some attention because the big parties are starting to lose because of us. I think that could make a huge difference. And I would love to see a resource allocation with a focus on making some waves at a federal level. Because again, the LNC is the national party, so that's the level we should be operating at that, and then we're empowering the rest of our affiliates to work in a decentralized manner that best befits them.
What do you think about a strategy of trying to of focusing on races in which one of the duopoly parties is not running? I mean, we often do. Sometimes we'll get 20 or 25. We'll get 20% in a race like that.
And even sometimes races where you have like city councils and they don't even have enough people to field the whole council. So I think that is it should be a critical element of our strategy. The one thing that we have to be aware of, and this is not a reason not to do it, this is a hurdle to overcome as well, but you still need good candidates then. If you have someone who goes and takes advantage of that and there's press that goes with it, and then is a really bad candidate or has some poor messaging, puts his foot in his mouth in a way that reflects negatively on us, that's going to end up being counterproductive. As we succeed more, we have to understand we're going to get much more scrutiny, and our mistakes are going to be magnified because the machine has not turned against us in a major way because we haven't been a threat to the machine. The more we succeed, yes, I believe success will always breed success, and I think it will snowball if we stay with it. But we do have to be aware that the more we succeed, the more the machine is going to fight back.
Well, I mean, if we're on the ballot, for example, and there's no red or no blue candidate there, that means the person will vote for a libertarian, and therefore we get people into the habit of voting for us.
Yep,
And then they start
absolutely.
rationalizing, oh, I voted for a libertarian here. So then maybe they actually might vote for a libertarian when there are two other candidates.
Yep.
It's unlikely, but I think it's unlikely because we only have so many people running for office. And, you know, where do you think there's a line to be drawn? I mean, for example, I mean, and it usually happens that we don't really have anybody who wants to run it for an office like this. But I mean, I don't think the Libertarian Party should run against Thomas Massey. What do you say to that?
I love Thomas Massey. Um, and I don't think he's perfect. And I think we need to get past any idea of a savior for anyone. But when we have principled people who are good leaders, we should definitely be backing them up. And I know he has an R next to his name, but I would argue he is a libertarian in almost every single way. The question you're asking, I think Thomas Massey might be the exception to the rule. So I think that in essentially every single other race in the United States of America, it benefits us to put good candidates up. And if the other parties want to do better, then they should find better candidates.
Yeah,
Thomas Massey runs for president. I don't know.
I don't think he's
Have to
going.
cross that
I
bridge
don't
when I
think
get
he's
there.
going to run for president. I don't think he's. I think he's going to stay in Congress. Is what I'm saying.
And I suspect that as well. And
And
so
if he tries to run for president, he's basically thrown his career away, as far as I can say.
I agree with you there.
I don't know what the roles are. Well, Ron Paul was still running for Congress and running for president. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's got no. Yeah, so I mean, because like I said, I don't think the Republican Party wants Thomas Massey. I think he's a
No,
fluke. I don't think he. It just happens to be. You have occasional flukes. Uh,
they don't even want Rand Paul. And Rand Paul he's a
yeah,
liberty Republican, but he's a Republican.
the only other I think I have to say after a while I got more sympathetic to her. I probably would have all. I have said, for example, in Texas, I said, let's give Shelley Luther a pass. This is a woman who got arrested for opening her hair salon. And I said, okay,
Okay.
let's. I said, yeah, let's not run against Shelley. And she served the cause. But there's a few good people like that in Texas. But yeah,
And I think there's a broader answer to your question. And it's this: right now we have limited resources. Uniparty has unlimited resources. Essentially,
yes,
it is an inefficient and in my opinion, a waste of resources to expend those resources running candidates against the few people in government who are actually trying to represent and push liberty. So if you want to run against Massey, I guess go for it. But what a stupid waste of resources! Like
yeah,
run for Senate there, or go for a local office. Hell, run
yeah,
for a local office and get Massey to endorse you, which would not be a surprise. I mean, there are much, much more efficient and more strategic ways to approach those races.
yeah, definitely. That's the thing. We've got so many people running for so many races. I mean, the problem is here. I think some people are setting the bar very low. I mean, and they're just if you're going to set the bar that low, then if somebody's over 90%, I'd say okay, we probably don't leave. But when they go below that threshold, uh, yeah, what are some things that you might like to restructure in the Libertarian Party to make it more efficient? I mean, like different bylaw ideas or something like that. I'll give you an idea I've got for a new bylaw. I want all adjournments to require 2/3 instead of a majority. And I
Interesting.
also and in the event of a failed adjournment vote, the person who called for the vote has to leave.
All
If they
right.
if it's an adjournment for the day, they just leave for the day. If it's an adjournment of the convention, they have to leave the convention because if they don't want to do business, that's fine.
So the two-thirds part I'd have to think about. I'm not disagreeing. I just
Yeah,
have to think about it. But the leave for the day, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Like you're going to put it out there, then be ready to back it up.
Because I've largely come to the conclusion that adjournments are simply used to sabotage business.
They could definitely be weaponized that way. I mean, without question.
Yeah,
Um, I will say this. So I'm wholeheartedly backing Amanda Griffiths for vice chair. I work with
yeah,
LP Allies, and we have been working on a fairly substantial reworking of the bylaws. Once we put out our proposed changes, I would be happy to come back on and discuss it with you in totality. but it is a reimagining of the way the LNC operates. So it goes to some of the strategic stuff I was talking about. So it makes the LNC a little more nimble. Um, it makes it more difficult for one group with a minority representation, but undue influence and malign intentions to come in and radically change things. But it does allow for more change to happen more easily in the immediacy of things. So it's a good balance, and it gives a lot of power to states, particularly those that are active. So it rewards activity. Um, so we are sort of re-looking at the way the whole party operates, and there's a strategic intention that's backing this work we're doing. I don't want to list any of the bylaws ahead of time because we're still sort of narrowing in what we're going to propose, and then it'll be up for scrutiny from the body as well. Um, Again, I do want to wholeheartedly get behind Amanda. She's
Yeah.
brilliant. Um, in
Amanda's been on
terms
your
of
choice.
yeah, okay.
Ken Mollman has a plan. He would like to have, for example, the LNC would be one representative from every state. So maybe the state chairs, but then they would elect, what he would call an LNEC, a Libertarian National Executive Committee, and then that committee would be something like that, like the current LNC, and then they would appoint a chair and appoint other officers. One thing it would do is it would give them the ability to remove a rogue chair, which we don't really have at this point. And unfortunately, I think we need to probably have some provisions to remove a chair if it's needed. But uh, I also
From the
don't know, but
body, that's interesting.
maybe 4-year terms for the LNC and staggering them. Like one half of the LNC is elected,
I mean,
in
I think
26.
the LNC is too big. I think the
Yeah.
committee's too big. I think
Okay.
that hampers some of the ability to move in a more nimble fashion. And I also think it allows distribution of outcome in a way that lessens accountability. And when I say accountability, again, it's not about blaming people. It's about seeing things that work and things that don't, and incentivizing people to not continue to pursue strategies that are ineffective.
Yeah. Well, we also
Um,
have this whole business where we have all these people changing regions all the time and all this nonsense, and that just seems rather silly. It's big
at
regions,
best, it's
small regions.
inefficient. At best, it's inefficient. It's one of those things that demands resources of time, money, volunteers with questionable, let's say, benefit. Um, I think that we can probably see a lot of improved efficiency with our IT. Um, I've worked at, 2 of the biggest banks in the world, and in risk in particular, and a lot of the stuff we looked at was IT risk and IT implementation, onboarding, vetting, and the biggest thing with any new application, no matter what the scale of it is if you don't have uptake, if people don't use it, then it doesn't matter how good you think it is. It's useless. So we have to look at what people are using and what people aren't, and we have to listen to people and what they say they need and try to provide IT solutions that give them an effective, an efficient, and a simple way to achieve those goals with the support of technology to whatever degree possible. I think we need to also have a better step-by-step training on some of the things that we offer. Go in and learn it by yourself is a tricky way. There's some people that are it's going to be great and that's what they're going to do anyway, but for others who maybe aren't Luddites but aren't as technology oriented, a step-by-step process and an easy way to problem solve if you run into issues is always going to help. And IT is always going to be a huge spend. So when you're putting money into it, you should be getting a big return on your investment.
Yeah. Getting back to Melee and something I've noticed, Rob, it doesn't seem like the LP does a lot of outreach to young voters. And I think you're much more likely to get young voters to vote for third parties than people who have already, spent their whole life voting for third parties. It's kind of like, which is easier to cure, the drug addict who's been doing it for a year, or the drug addict who's been doing it for 10 years. Uh,
So I'm glad you brought that up. And I was talking about this in a Twitter space last week. When I say targeted messaging, like I have thought a lot about what those demographic groups might look like and how we can test. And I think the number one group should be young voters. Right now you have Young Americans for Liberty and Students for Liberty, and that's the only two organizations that are even somewhat affiliated with us out there doing the work at colleges. And how many colleges are they at? Nowhere near enough. What are they actively trying to pursue? Do they even really know? Have we given them the support that they need to continue to be effective? And then you look at what Charlie Kirk was able to do. No matter what you thought of what he was trying to do with it, he realized the importance of the youth and he just started going to colleges.
Yeah.
And look at how effective that was. We
And it
need
also helped
programs
that he
like
was still. It also helped that he was still pretty young. You know,
for
sorry.
sure.
Yeah,
No. You're 100% right. We need faces that look like the people we're trying to talk to. Like I said, I coach youth sports. If I come in and I'm talking to kids as a coach, as that sort of authority figure, if I'm a decent coach, that's going to work. But there's an understanding of the relationship there. If I'm trying to create this sort of relationship built on trust and a brief conversation, if I'm 25 years older than a person, there's no way that they're not going to at first at least perceive it as me talking down. But when it's someone they see as a peer, you immediately bridge that gap. And so instead of working to bridge that gap, if we can send in messengers who work with the people they're trying to talk to, that makes things a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. And the youth movement is another one where if you build it right, it builds on itself. You will get this sort of snowballing exponential effect because effective chapters of like libertarian clubs at colleges that grow, then what work can be sent to other colleges? College kids like action. You need clubs that are going to go out and do stuff. And maybe they're standing next to the leftists protesting war one day and then standing next to the conservatives, protesting attacks on free speech the next day. And it's when we show that we're principled, that shines through and it attracts these still forming, curious, active minds that are hungry for change and who are being filled with socialist nonsense from most of their professors right now. Like that's what's being put into the void, and we should be countering that every time we can.
Yeah, I was surprised at the reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. I mean, I was certainly, but I just remember thinking, this is like what happened when Diana or John Lennon died. It really seemed to be that much. There was actually one little vigil here here in the Austin area. People got together and just he really was making a difference. And I don't agree with him on everything. I think he was going more down the religious conservative path, but on some issue. But I'm kind of at this point though where we got to work together and just fight the socialists and then defeat them and then fight over the spoils later. It's because they're just so horrible right now. But
the other thing is, so I was never that into Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I wasn't really into him either. But I was so like I said, if I was into him, I would have known how much he was. But he was clearly making a difference because you have turning point student clubs and stuff like that.
And that's what jumped out to me after he was shot is how big his reach quietly was. And so I've watched a lot of him since. I still disagree with him on a lot. I'm really not a conservative. I'm all the way libertarian. But he was accused of racism and sexism, and I was going in and trying to find examples of that, and I couldn't. I did see when one student stood up, I want to say University of Wyoming, I don't remember which school, but spouting some very directly racist nonsense, and Charlie Kirk was like, "Get out! Like I'm not even going to entertain those ideas." And then you have the media apparatus that was against the conservative movement calling him a racist and a sexist and a fascist, and the people that were listening were like, well, he's not that at all. And so then that crack develops in their trust of the establishment media, the apparatus that's working against him. That's where we can be working in too. Like we do not define libertarianism well at all on a mass scale. We allow it to be defined. Charlie Kirk went and defined conservatism, and you could agree with it, you could disagree with it, but you couldn't twist his words against him, except for the diehards that were going to be against him anyway. We have not filled that niche. We need to be defining libertarianism, getting people. Lars said everyone in America should Google what is a libertarian. That's awesome, but that's step one. Step two should be that it's very clear what a libertarian is and what we stand for, and it's easy for people to digest. It's not going, look, I love the Mises Institute. But that's not the first place someone should go when they're curious about libertarianism.
I don't know where the first place is anymore. I feel like there's a lot of people. It doesn't seem like there are very many people that I'd call 100% libertarian anymore, but there are a bunch of people that are maybe 85 to 90% libertarian, and they just. I mean, I had this one faction of people who didn't seem to care about the coronavirus nonsense, but then I had this other faction that cared about it, but then they all went and voted for Trump, even though Trump promoted. It's like, what's home anymore? I mean, I feel
Isn't
like
that amazing?
I feel like the American liberty movement overall is just in really bad shape right now, and I guess that's why I did this show to try to bring it back.
So I'm not quite as black-pilled. I think that the heart of the liberty movement is beating loud and strong. Like I said, I think where there's some soul searching going on right now, and I think it's scattered. So decentralized doesn't necessarily mean not unified. And I know Amanda hates the word unified. She likes solidarity. I think when I say unity, it means the same thing. It means we're united around these principles of liberty, and we're all committed to implementing a strategy that advances the principles of liberty and doesn't violate our principles. And we understand the reality of the moment, that the way I see it, there are two ways out of our current situation. Because again, current situation, not as bad as we're told, but the trajectory is very bad, is my position. And it's quickly getting worse. Like, we're seeing an acceleration of things. Social media, like you said, is throwing a ton of fuel on the fire. Things happen. News cycles don't even last a day now. They last 6 hours, but it just radicalizes and polarizes more and more. So the two ways out: one, there's an incremental way out. You start reversing the tide. You start picking things apart one by one, and then success breeds more success. And the other way out is violence of some sort, real mass violence. And there are so many people like, yeah, we want. No, you don't. You don't want mass violence. Very few people. Go ask a soldier who was in war if you want mass violence, because they've seen it, and they'll tell you how much you don't want to see people shooting each other in the streets. Look at just the National Guard coming in as a police force and how disruptive that was, and how many small negative unintended consequences. If that starts to happen in scale, if we have the military deployed and fighting with each other on US soil, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of death. That's not a good outcome.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good outcome. I don't know. Not something I want. Although we haven't had. I mean, sometimes I get so mad. When people talk about immigrants, it's an invasion. I said, you don't know what an invasion is.
Yeah.
And Rob, the sad truth is, really, Americans really don't know what inflation is, and they really don't know what poverty is either.
They have no idea what poverty is.
I mean, when you look at what some of these other countries have been through with inflation, also, it's really wild. I mean, yeah, it sucks here, but I think social media. The problem with social media has created this drive-by culture where people just do not engage in ideas, and nobody listens and nobody hears anything anymore. And Rob, if you're an LNC chair, and this is something I would do for the Libertarian Party Discord, here's one rule I would have right now. Okay, you have to be a member. Yeah, you have to be a member to get on the Discord, I guess, but also full name and a headshot.
Oh, that's a pretty good idea.
Because there is so much of what's, I wouldn't necessarily call it rude, but just what I would call noise.
Counterproductive noise.
Low quality discussion. And it almost always comes, and I said, this almost always comes from somebody, who has a name like John Smith or Bill Miller or some generic name that's probably made up. I've long been convinced that there are people out there that are just operating these accounts to act as agitators. And I know I don't have any evidence for that other than it's just a theory. But you end up with these.
So first of all, I
For
wouldn't be
example,
surprised
I'll give you an example. I was at the Travis County meeting last year, and somebody left a sign for Bob King at the meeting. And so I go on the Texas Discord into the Travis County channel, and I said, "Hey, somebody left a Bob King sign, and I guess he's having a dinner. Can somebody get the sign back to Bob so Bob can use it?" And the first response I get is somebody who isn't in Travis County says, "Put it in a polling place." And I just said, "Thank you for a completely worthless response." And I just said, "You aren't in Travis County." And the other thing is, too, I don't know where his polling place is. I don't have sticks. I'm trying to do something here, and you are just making noise. And
Again,
I'm just trying to help.
inefficiency, waste of
You're
resources.
making noise. Yeah. It's noise.
So I think that speaks to a broader issue, and I think there are solutions. So you say these people are there just as agitators, whether it's deliberate.
This person is not there as this
He's
person.
not.
This is a real person who is, but he's doing the same thing. He's just words that have no value and would be better off if they'd never been, and we'd all be better off if they'd never been said.
And so I actually think that's more important, because I think people become agitators. So we have a secondary economy in the country right now it's an attention economy, and everyone is caught up in it. Like, it's impossible to be online and not, to some extent. But so we don't provide clear, useful outlets for that attention economy. So the reward is for being a troll, or simply for saying something regardless of the value of what you say. And if we give opportunities, and I really mean like coordinated cyberbully a politician, like today we're going after this idiot, and that's what we're going to do. And everyone go in and dump on this person because it's going to get attention. So if you just want to be a troll, let's give you an outlet to be a troll.
Yeah.
And if you want to promote a campaign, okay, here are some campaigns that really need promotion right now, and here's the messaging they're trying to share. Here's where you can donate. Here's where you can volunteer. And so let's take all these things that are being done to us, and instead let's have them things that we're doing for us.
Yeah, it's not just in the LP; it's everywhere.
Oh yeah,
Like
of course.
it's just noise, and it's largely because the person didn't read. These people who respond to things, but clearly have not read what they're responding to. That's I mean, if 90% of the arguments in the Libertarian Party would go away if people would just argue with things that I actually say or things that a person actually says. But no, somebody says something, you twist what they say, and then you argue with their twistification.
For the sake of the attention.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think it's for the. I don't think these people. I don't know why these people are doing it, but it's, it's so. It's this need of taking. There's a culture of not being able to handle criticism or even handling disagreement without taking it personally, and this is long before the Mises Caucus ever showed up. I've noticed it, in the late 90s. I often joke, I could point out a spelling error, and somebody was saying, "Well, you're just being negative."
No, you're not a spelling error.
And I think in some cases we've got to be we've got to try to be professional and be polished in what we present. Somebody was talking about, the shooting of Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guard shooting. And it's like, why are you posting a reversed photo of this person? It looks ridiculous. It's not hard. Reorient the photo correctly. There's freeware that will just flip that photo and it'll look fine. And then you can read her name on the uniform. So, and, things like showing up on time for meetings. I mean, I have to admit, when I was voting for Libertarian offices, I was thinking about stuff like that. Is this person going to show up on time for the meetings, or is this person always going to be late?
There's a overall professional decorum. And it's actually, I say the way you dress, and I've been I was debating this T-shirt beforehand. It's Friday. I'm wearing my Delta Ray T-shirt, one of my favorite bands. But I did put on a
Yes.
sweater. But showing up and looking nice, don't show up in sweatpants and a dirty T-shirt for a professional meeting, and certainly not as a candidate. And these are little things that, like, I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. Some of it I think they don't even think about. But we should have those resources available. Like, okay, you're running for office. Go get a suit. Doesn't have to be a fancy suit. Have a suit. Make sure it fits. Get 3 or 4 ties, 3 or 4 different color shirts that all match with the suit, some nice shoes, and that's what you show up in. And that's that with a suit that can be for man or woman, whatever it may be. Like, you get some nice dress clothes. Keep your hair cut. You're gonna wear a beard, try to keep your beard nice. Because this is what people notice first. People judge books by their cover.
Chase Oliver always presented a really good appearance.
Very
That was
impeccable usually.
beautiful, yeah. I don't know if that's because he was gay, but they seem to be more conscious of those kinds of things. But yeah, Chase always looked and sounded presidential. That was the nicest way to say it. It was.
And one of the things we've joked about, but I think we should take seriously, is like, let's get Chase to do like a queer eye for the Libertarian Eye, or whatever the name of the show is. Like, hey, here's how to make sure you don't look like a slob when you show up somewhere.
Well,
I mean, it
one
doesn't.
time I remember we went around. I acting classes here in Austin, and one time Marco Perella had us walk around the studio, and we looked at all these different headshots. What makes a good headshot? What makes a bad headshot? I mean, actors live and die on headshots,
Mhm.
so you have to have a good headshot. And we had just, went over those things. It was
Yeah, and get a professional one. It costs $100, and you get 7 or 8 out of them. They do a little photoshopping,
well,
nothing to make you distorted, but you get
well.
your
What
best
nature
face,
of a
your
photo shoot
angle.
is you take about 50 or 60 pictures, and then you pick out maybe the 10 best ones.
Yep.
That's how that works.
And then they touch them up.
Yeah.
So the circles under your eyes totally gone. Your teeth are maybe a little whiter than they were that day. It's not a lie. It's the best version of you, and that's the point
It's
of a
kind of weird.
professional
You
headshot.
can do so many things now with that kind of stuff. You don't want to do it too much, but yeah, it's pretty wild. What are some other things you'd like to do? I mean, for example, there's the whole building situation. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with that. We can't, as far as I know, we can't just sell it. I don't think I don't think we ever needed the building, but it's better than paying rent.
It is better than paying rent, and there is something to be said for the symbol of having a building. But if we're going to, then the headquarters should reflect what we are trying to send. And I mean, look, I don't like him at all, but Donald Trump is better at this than almost anyone. Like, he puts his name on things and he makes them as flashy and often gaudy as possible, but it works with a lot of people. I think our symbols should be almost stoic, like this calm, consistent liberty that reflects the principles we stand for. I think if we have a building, it's something that press should be able to come into at any time and take a bunch of pictures, and we look good, and people working there should look good doing it. Um, in terms of what real estate we should hold, what assets we should hold, that is primarily driven by balance sheet. And you have to get the balance sheet right before you can have those things that aren't luxuries, but they're not necessities either. They're sort of that gray area in between. It's not a luxury, but it's still a nice to have. It's not a necessity. So we got to
Well,
get the balance sheet right first.
I agree. I think there's just really not right now. Obviously there's an expense in the question of whether or not we need it or not. I mean, I went to a seminar at the Foundation for Economic Education, and they used to have this mansion in Irvington, New York, which had been owned by the Tiffany family. Immaculate place, absolutely beautiful. And they moved out of that place in 2014 because it just was at a point where they didn't need it anymore. I mean, it was an amazing place to go to for a seminar, but I was sad, but I also realized they don't need this anymore, and
Yeah.
it's just because everybody can work at home now and be virtual.
And
It's
real estate in particular,
yeah,
for individuals, A
Yeah.
property company is an amazing investment because you're always getting a return on your investment.
Yeah, you could maybe I don't I know there are all kinds of legalities here too that I wasn't aware of. Maybe you can rent out own the building and then rent out a lot of it to other people and then use it and make income out of it. It's
And seminars, things like that, if there's ways to make money
Yeah,
off it,
having
then
seminars
that's
and
awesome.
stuff too is great too. Yeah, I might even say possibly like just like feed it, possibly have a few little beds and have like a little dorm so people can stay
Yeah,
there.
sure. Why
And
not?
I don't
Why
think it
not?
necessarily has to be in DC either. That's another thing.
That's a
I
very
mean,
expensive place to have it.
I said, well, it's in Alexandria, but I said, well, St.
It's a little bit
Louis.
more expensive
I said St. Louis, nice and centrally located. North, south, east, west. That's
and
but
not expensive. It's
yeah,
interesting.
less expensive. But there are lots of reasons for why we do what we do. Because I think the hard thing for me, Rob, is I've always felt like the Libertarian Party shoots itself in the foot in a lot of different ways. And they're just things like, why did you do this? It's small little things. It's demoralizing to watch that because you work hard, you want this to be successful, and you just see places where I think sometimes the party's sabotaging its own efforts. When I lived in Ohio one time, they had the state convention on the same weekend as Mother's Day.
That's an unforced error.
And then, yeah, that's just, and I just think, and after a while, you just kind of think, it's just, yeah, it's unforced error is a good way to call it. Yeah. You've got to, I think having national in DC was an unforced error too, because that just ended up being a whole lot more money to spend just for the privilege of being there.
It is. That's where I was born. It is an expensive place.
Yeah. Yeah, the state conventions are a little easier to have. You don't have to have as many of them. And how many state and national conventions have you attended?
So I've been to one national convention. I went in DC. I've been to a bunch of state conventions. I mean, just in North Carolina alone, I've been to 7 or 8.
Yeah.
A couple other states, and I'm planning to get to a few state conventions in the next few months too. So
Yeah, that's actually one thing. Running for LNC chair is a lot of work, and
yes,
you're spending all this time running for a job that doesn't pay anything.
I know. I've thought about it.
You probably have some fairly long trips for the North Carolina convention too, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm in a few hours. We're pretty excited. This year is our 50th anniversary, and we're going to be at Lake Lure, which is a beautiful place in North Carolina where they shot Last of the Mohicans and part of Dirty Dancing, as well as other movies.
At Lake what?
Lake Lure, Lure.
Oh, where's that?
It's in the mountains. It's not way into the mountains. It's past the foothills. You're in the mountains, but it's approaching Asheville. It's about 40 minutes outside of Asheville.
So that's a pretty long trip, say, from people from Wilmington or Nags Head, but yes.
Nags Head, it gets a lot further. Wilmington, I think it's about 4 hours. Nags Head, you got to cross the bridge, the Bonner Bridge, and you got to get through the Outer Banks, which is not necessarily long, but it can be slow. It's probably about 5.5 hours.
I don't know if that many people live over there, but yeah,
We'll
the
get a
state
few.
conventions don't have to have as many people, so there are more options for a state convention because you have just less people.
Yeah. I mean, the state convention once a year, you can almost always drive it, even if it's a long drive. We try to make it affordable. The same challenges as someone coming across the country and having to buy a ticket and get a hotel room. It is a trickier logistics proposition for the national convention than it is the state one.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything here so far. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, I think that I don't want to compete against other people running for chair per se. I want to present some ideas. And if you like my ideas, then it would be my honor to get your vote. And if you don't like my ideas, the people I know, well, at least the one person I know who is also running for chair is a good option. And I think you'll be in good hands no matter what. I'm optimistic about the future of the party. I'm an eternal optimist. My hope floats eternal to an obnoxious degree sometimes, but I'm not going to change on that. And all I can say is I will never stop. I will never quit. I will work until it kills me probably, but I love doing this. I love the Liberty family. I love what we stand for. And I will bring that passion to the role of LNC chair.
Okay, well, where are you out there? Do you have a site or anything for this, or just website or Twitter? Or
Yeah, right. So just on Twitter, it's Prosper PROSPERCLT 2023 is my handle. Uh, I will have a site and a whole bunch of stuff up over the next few weeks. I'm slow playing it a little bit. I don't mean to drag it out, but
yeah,
in particular, associated with LP Allies, which is an awesome organization, I recommend everyone check out. And um, working with Amanda, I want to get these bylaws finished and ready when we're ready to publish something. But I should have my website up for the chair in the next couple weeks.
yes, okay. Well, please like the show, like the podcast, subscribe to the channel.
Definitely.
Buy my
Everyone
novels.
listening, subscribe to Fountainhead Forum.
Yeah, check out my Substack, and people are giving me money to buy me a coffee. Thank
There you
you,
go.
Rob Yates.
Oh, thank you.
Speaker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.